One I noted very early on in your story, not only was mentorship a big part, but also advocacy. And like the principal who reached out, and even though you had tried 3 times to apply, he advocated. He didn't know anything about veterinary medicine, but he said, you need to take on this person. And so I think advocacy also has a role to play in our journey. So by supporting each other, I think is a huge opportunity to help the whole veterinary community and beyond. Um, Another thing I noticed was your ability to work with a very diverse group of people, even outside of veterinary medicine. In fact, you said at one point, I think it was with the CDC, you were the only veterinarian in the team in the department. So I think having exposure to very different points of view, perspectives, backgrounds could be very helpful. What was that like working as the only veterinarian?
Yeah, I'll answer that question first, and then maybe we can go back to the mentorship and
Yes.
advocacy part two. Yeah, it was very interesting because it was a new branch, and being the veterinarian, a lot of people yeah, would come up to me and say, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
And of course, my answer to them was, "Well, this is a retrovirus branch, and that's what I did my PhD in. And why are you here?" They would say, "Well, I'm an epidemiologist and I study data on public health." And I said, "Well, great. Tell me more about that." And the curiosity of being a scientist, where you are asking questions like what causes that animal to be sick? Why didn't that treatment work? Led into in the research lab, what is the mechanism of that disease? Well, that curiosity carries over. And I found myself just very eager to learn about them. I learned about their interest, what role they played, how did they get there? And of course, great friends develop from that because, when you show people respect and you listen to them and you understand what role we all play. We're all trying to solve the same issue. We were in a branch together to be a public health unit that helped solve a disease problem at a national level, but we all had different roles to play. They just needed to understand my role. And so when I was developing diagnostic tests for viruses and having that background as a veterinarian, they understood, oh, this is your role and this is how we developed it. Eventually, I was asked to form a reference laboratory by the Food and Drug Administration. And I was asked to go to Washington and show them how I tested for these viruses. And I remember walking into the room and again, the only veterinarian there, and around the room are some really famous people that had discovered these viruses and putting up my criteria of how I used, the various diagnostic tests and the screens and ruled out whether it was positive, negative, or indeterminate. I was stunned when they accepted my criteria to form the basis for evaluating diagnostic tests for this virus. But what that told me is it gave me confidence that I had the skill sets. I had the knowledge and skill sets, the great training I had at Colorado State, the people that I was around at Colorado State that helped me, get into this position, trained me well, and I was able to contribute. And I think that that is something that veterinarians underestimate, how they can contribute in to their teams at work, whether they're in a practice setting or whether they're in a public health setting or a research setting, wherever they're at, government, industry. Sometimes we underestimate our skill sets when we are very uniquely trained, with skills that range in understanding the physiology of different species to disease spread, all the things we know we have to do to become a veterinarian. And what I learned early on is you have to speak up and you have to sometimes advocate for yourself, getting back to the advocacy. In fact, a new branch chief was hired. His name was Tom Folks, great scientist. He came out of Tony Fauci's lab and he became our branch chief. He went around to interview everybody. And as he was interviewing me to ask me what I was doing, I told him what I did, and he said, well, that's interesting because other people in the branch don't know what you do. And I realized that I had to tell him myself. Within a week, he offered me a section chief job because of what I did and what I was proving in the laboratory. And again, that showed me that I needed to both learn from other people, learn about the branch, learn about the CDC, but also be curious and also to advocate for myself. And early on, that's where the mentoring started too for me, because we had students from Emory that came into the lab, and I was able to, for the very first time, mentor other students and found those same attributes that followed me all the way back to high school, where I really appreciated the mentors and what they did for me. I now had a chance to be a mentor, and that became a theme throughout my entire career, is the value of mentorship. And mentorship is so critical at all stages of life. I'm still looking for mentors in my career. And I think the lectures that I give about mentorship, the studies that I've been involved with in various stages of my career, show there's clearly best practices for being a good mentor. Things like listening, making the time for your protege or your mentee, taking the effort to really understand what their goals are, but also guiding them. And mentors come in a variety of forms. They could be a content mentor, which is just simply how do you become a veterinarian or how do you become a specialist. They could be a life mentor, which is, hey, there's life out there. Let's go hiking. Let's, see the city. There could be other mentors, and mentorship is really a composite. It's really like an ecosystem in which you search out mentors. Mentors may be assigned to you, whether you're in practice, it could be a senior partner. But to take advantage of that, it has a dual relationship. The mentor has to have certain characteristics. The mentee has to be willing to be guided and advised and seek out the advice of mentors. And that certainly has been true in my life. I really appreciated all the great mentors I've had in my life.
Yes, I as well. And actually, mentorship tends to be a theme very often in these podcast episodes. So it must be true if it keeps coming up. So, absolutely. And going on to dive in a little bit more into One Health, because I think we could talk a lot about that. One, I mean, not many veterinarians get to be invited into the National Academy of Medicine. So that's huge. And being able to be in that place where there's not a lot of veterinarians and to advocate for veterinarians and what we do, I think is really special. So thank you for what you do. Um, but can you speak more onto your passion of One Health and the different jobs that are available in here, the importance of it, and also maybe how to advocate for yourself in those types of situations because we can bring a lot of value.
Yeah, that's a great question because I did not know what the term One Medicine or One Health, when I was back at Colorado State studying sheep viruses and then realizing that they had value to cross disciplines and have value to human health. I did learn about the term when I was at CDC because my mentors there, Fred Murphy, introduced me to the concept of One Medicine, and I did start to understand this interface that veterinarians are uniquely positioning themselves for through their training and through their work at that interface between animals, people, and the environment. And if you think about it, a lot of the problems in our society, a lot of the issues we face are at that interface of those three elements. You may come at it from a physician's perspective, where it's more about human health. We may come at it from a environmental perspective as an environmental scientist, or as an animal scientist. And veterinarians are often at that interface between the three of those major areas. And we can cite many, many examples from COVID to, toxins in our environment to climate change and the infection on infectious disease. And what I realized is that I had a passion for studying that in a particular narrow way with a virus disease, But as I became a leader and had the opportunity to mentor students as a graduate studies director, later as a chair, then dean, of how many different ways veterinarians are needed in society and how many different skill sets that they can apply, whether it be government, industry, or in research and a variety of areas, public health, that it became a passion of mine to help develop those. And I was very fortunate during the time that I was dean to see these take off. It was even earlier at Ohio State where I, was able to help graduate students find funding, help develop programs. But as dean, I had a unique position at a place like UC Davis, and One Health programs are all over the country. They're, I was AVMC president. We have at least 30 veterinary schools, and almost every one of them has some aspect of training veterinarians or developing opportunities for careers in this field. And when we start to talk about that, students are often interested and curious because they may have a variety of passions. What I like to start with is asking students, what is your passion? What is it that you want to do? And they'll have sometimes a very specific career path in mind. They may want to do wildlife diseases, for example. They may want to study animals in other parts of the world. And so what I found at UC Davis was we had some programs already in areas such as, sending some scholarships to allow students to study in other countries. But what we really need to do is organize it. So we developed an Office of Global Programs in which we could consolidate and offer scholarships, gain more funding, track opportunities around the world. And we were very fortunate to recruit, in this case, another member of the National Academies, Pat Conrad, to run that program. And I use that as an example because we started to listen to our students and their passions, then providing them resources and guidance of how to do a One Health summer program in Africa, for example, or around the world. And what we realized, it was changing their lives. It was showing them the interface of animals, people, and the environment in that setting, but they were learning about the culture. They were learning about multicultural sensitivities. They were learning about diversity. They were learning about the value of respect around the world as they were doing these programs. So we would ask them to do videos and in their own voice, tell us about their research project and then show it to the students when they got back. And these were fabulous. With a little guidance, they were much better than some of our videographers. And they would tell a story about the culture, about their One Health project. And then we would use it in a global health day to talk to the new students as they came in, again, exposing them to that. On a domestic level, we would take advantage of every opportunity we could to get students outside of the classroom, so to speak, both regionally but also nationally. Centers for Disease Control has a day in which they invite veterinary students to the CDC from around the nation. And we would pay for and send students with the faculty to go to the CDC day, and many other schools do that. And the CDC was very gracious in setting up simulated epidemics, talking about careers at the CDC. There are many other places that take interns. And so what we started to do is offer these opportunities, whether it be an internship, whether it be a scholarship for an international program, or whether it be locally in the community for students to be taking their knowledge from their curriculum but applying it to real world problems. And it so happens that many of those were One Health related issues. And so that became a passion and a very much a rewarding part of my job was to develop these. And we worked with donors, we worked with foundations, and then we listened again to students. And one of the interesting things about that was they said, well, we would like to do this project with the medical school. It's called Knight's Landing. It was where it was located at. But it was a local underserved community where they had a medical clinic, but they didn't have a veterinary clinic. So we partnered with the medical school to set up a One Health clinic at the same time as their medical One Health clinic. and the community loved it. These were migrant workers which had no access and had very little transportation to get to their veterinarians, but they had animals, they needed the help. So we set up that and then found donors that would graciously have money to that. But that was a student-driven idea. That was the students that wanted to serve their community, and it accomplished a number of different educational goals. Again, diversity, multicultural competency. The population they were serving spoke only Spanish primarily. So again, understanding language as a barrier to services. So we were developing outside activities and opportunities for students, and then listening at the same time to their passions and wishes. And this paralleled goals within the curriculum to expose students to a variety of careers, expose students to multicultural competencies. So we were both allowing us to help develop their career, but also helping our educational goals as well.
Yeah. Oh, I think so much is related, more than I think we realize often. And one, I really appreciate being able to share opportunities with students because I personally, I had to seek out this opportunity, but I did find it. And I was able to go and work with the Elephant Orphanage Project in Zambia while I was a vet student. And that was, as I think you said, it changed their lives. It changed my life as well. Everything from seeing the interaction of taking care of the elephants and the villages around. There
Mhm.
was a lot of relationship issues between the elephants and the villagers that we had to figure out to protect both sides, right? Protect the elephants, but also the people. It was not an experience I could have gotten anywhere else. And so that was huge. I like these opportunities, even if not necessarily like I'm not an elephant veterinarian. So even though it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what my career is going to look like forever and ever, that it's still important to gather these skills, make connections along the way, because these students are meeting these people that could advocate for them somewhere else or think of
Mhm.
them when an opportunity comes up. So I think all of those are really, really important. Along the lines of building these programs, I like that you listen so much to the students because I know that when I talk to veterinary students, I get a lot of enthusiasm because they're very enthusiastic and they have so many new, fresh ideas to bring to the table. So I'm glad that we're giving them a voice. What else are you learning from students or learned from students, still learning probably from students that you think that the greater veterinary community could
Well, I
appreciate?
think, yeah, I think there are a variety of ways, because we all have within our veterinary colleges and institutions challenges, from mental health to communication skills. We needed to listen to change and evolve the curriculum. So the profession has evolved quite a bit in terms of the way that we're taught, the way that we do, and the accreditation standards have evolved with that. But one of the things, for example, just to take a piece of that, is on communication. And what we realized is we may not have had all of the faculty that we needed to teach business and communication skills. So we ended up hiring. His name is Jim Clark. He's a national figure now in veterinary business and out of the Bay Area. And he had three very successful emergency practices. And what he did was came in because he had a DVM and an MBA. He understood business very well, and it was very successful. And what we started to do is incorporate what they're calling a doctoring program. And it was modeled after what was happening in the medical school, but it was about all of those skills that we normally wouldn't have gotten in the curriculum, everything from professionalism to communication skills to multicultural competencies, and began to integrate that within the curriculum from day one. So at the very beginning, it's professionalism, starting with a white coat ceremony to, things like developing a resume. It was later much more about communications. It was about client communications. We would have problem-based courses on videotaping veterinarians in different settings, asking the students to critique those, then eventually having actors come in, which we paid to serve as simulated clients, and including multicultural different clients, so that they could understand the difference between somebody from Nigeria versus somebody from San Francisco. And so by then developing those skills and using the technology of videotaping them and social skills from and learning from social scientists, by the time the students got into their fourth year and actually had to, start interacting directly with clients in their both in their externships as well as in the clinic, they were much more confident. And certainly that was so different. None of the veterinarians in my age group got that chance. We were thrust in as senior students in the clinic with a client and told, figure this out. And that's unfair. Having that ability to now bring in these other individuals with these talents, we began to realize there's a lot of other things that students really were interested in. Innovation. A lot of students are very interested in changing the profession, and we need to listen to that. We need to listen to what are their ideas about the profession. In addition, as they're learning, they develop new ideas. So we developed a relationship with the Graduate School of Management and developed an Innovation Entrepreneurship Academy, both for students as well as faculty. That was where they had ideas. They could be, patented ideas and inventions for new diagnostic tests to simple physical help for an animal in a classroom or in an exam room, but they needed the help of to get that idea to market, so to speak. And we had ended up developing several startup companies, and the students won some national competitions in presenting their ideas. Now, I don't know whether those students will become, business gurus, but I do know that we listened to them and they got exposed to a different set of people. In this case, people from the Graduate School of Management. And many veterinarians are going into, at some level, business. And I was in business. Immediately, what I realized when I went into practice was I didn't know the difference between inventory and a balanced, accounting sheet than, anything. But I had to learn it on the fly, so to speak. If we can get them trained early on and expose them to that during their curriculum, it's much easier and they add more to their jobs. And many of them do become incorporated within the business, and they know the value of what their return should be to that business. They negotiate better for their own contracts. We taught contract negotiations so that they were more confident when they got out of school and they were able to negotiate a proper compensation and got the value they deserved for their what they were adding back to the practice. And so I think the key element that I was learning was the profession, veterinary education needs to continue to look not only internally to evaluate themselves, but externally to learn from everything from research techniques to business techniques. And I think that was the exciting part about being an educator and an administrator, where we did have a lot of very entrepreneurship things going on. One of those was in regenerative medicine, for example. Crazy ideas of people like Boaz Arzi, who is one of our dentists, who said, I would like to use stem cells for feline gingivostomatitis. And, we're like, what? And injecting stem cells. But what happened was they had a research program. They were understanding the immunological mechanisms that were mediating that disease, and stem cells were a way to dampen down the inflammation. And from that, he went to the academy, developed a lot of new ideas, eventually to form patents. And then the patent was bought off by a company, which is now making it available for lots of other pets and lots of other diseases like osteoarthritis. And that came from just listening to the faculty and being innovative enough, and then supporting the faculty in the skill sets that they needed to be able to translate that great scientific discovery not only to publications, but eventually to a new market for pets.
Oh, that's fascinating to me. And I don't know if you pulled that out because you know how much I like innovation, but I just think that is it goes back and starts to pull in other things we've talked about. Getting exposure to people with other expertise, the value that veterinarians can bring in so many different settings, the creativity and getting to know all the different things that we can do, even if it's just to build different skill sets. You remain very, very active. It's one reason why I found you is because you're still very, very engaged on LinkedIn and
Mhm.
having these types of conversations. What is something that you would like to leave the profession or the people listening?
Yeah, I am very active on LinkedIn and Twitter as well as Instagram, and I try to use those platforms to talk about the profession, talk about cutting edge things that are happening. Now that I'm retired, I have more time to do it even more, and so I'm consulting in One Health and consulting in leadership and consulting other groups around these topics that we discussed today. And I want to give back. I want to give back to the profession in that way because it's given me so many opportunities. I'm just so very, very grateful for the opportunities. I wouldn't have changed my profession. If I had to do it all over again, I would have been a veterinarian. And I say that truthfully because that really opened up all these opportunities for me because I had that a background and that great training and the great mentors and the great programs that I've been associated with. So I think I would leave it with stay curious, follow your passions, and also be aware that life happens as you're making plans. Be open to those changes that may occur. If an opportunity is coming to you, which may be apparently a negative sometimes, it may be an opportunity for a new direction. The innovation part is to apply new thinking. What I love about the profession right now is innovation is happening all across it. Some of it's we're forced into it because of necessity. In other cases, it's just brilliant people coming together and exchanging ideas. I like the idea of multidisciplinary approaches. So being open to listen to people from a variety of professions, and it's a lifelong learning model. It's truly is. I'm continuing to learn every single day, and being able to speak socially or being able to speak at universities. I was just at the National Academy meetings, and I can tell that they very much value our profession and the role that we play in addressing societal needs. In fact, what we end up incorporating within the mission statement, very simple mission statement at UC Davis, was to advance the health of animals, people, and the environment. So the whole mission of the entire school became One Health. And the vision was to lead veterinary medicine, but also address societal needs. And I think that really said it all. And I really appreciate the faculty that helped us come up with that mission and vision, and are doing it every single day.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I I have a big question for you. This may be hard to answer, and that's okay. But you've done so much, giving back so much. What is one of the most proud memories you have after all these years?
Probably my most proud memory is actually being a father. I'm a father of a blended family of 5 children. I'm very proud that they all grew up and they're all, went to college, 3 with graduate degrees, all in different professions. I do have one of my daughters is a manager of a VCA clinic, and so I'm obviously one of them followed kind of my path. But I'm so proud of that. I think, at the end of the day, I'm proud of all the friends and relationship and colleagues that have been blessed to be associated with at all of those places I've been at throughout my entire career and continue to run into and to meet and see. So, I think that that's a hallmark. It's really about the people around you. It's really about those relationships. It's and how to continue to grow and be involved. That's what really drives you at the end of the day. At the end of your life, they're not going to be talking about the publications or the accomplishments. They're going to be talking about your attributes. Were you kind? Were you compassionate? Were you a good listener? Did you support me? So, I guess I would reflect upon being a father of a blended family was the best training I've ever had to being a dean.
Yes, and I agree. Relationships are definitely what makes our lives valuable. Yep.
Mhm.
All right. Your final four questions are: what is something that people get wrong about you?
Oh, well, that's a good question. It could go back to being a redhead, and when I was really young, and people would come in and said, "You must have a temper." And I go, "No, I didn't. I didn't have." But I think sometimes they may underestimate, and I think a lot of people feel that way. Sometimes we may be underestimated, whatever the position is, and so I found through hard work, really the ability to overcome adversity that, they sometimes underestimated me of what I could do. It's like that counselor back in high school that said,
Yep.
get another plan. Well, that set the tone for that. And I think also the rest of your life is happening. Well, I was a runner, and I knew that early on in grade school that I was able to run longer and endure pain, I guess, and eventually became a cross country runner and in high school, and I loved it and had great memories of all my teammates and running cross country meets. But that experience allowed me to also take those attributes, discipline, the ability to train into other aspects of my life. And so sometimes people don't know that I was a marathon runner. I ran Pikes Peak Marathon before. I used to be fast, but for me, I ran a 3:07 marathon in Columbus, and I really enjoyed training for marathons. And so some people don't know that you have other things in your life besides your profession.
Well, you answered the second question, I think, which was what is a hidden skill or interest? So, do you want to stick with running or do you have another one?
Yeah, I think running would be. I think I love to write, and I had a dean's perspective that I love to write, and I think my Scottish genes or Irish genes are coming out sometimes in trying to express myself in writing. I love to read literature. I'm reading the 1619 project right now, and but history and people like Saul Bellow and Hemingway and and so sometimes the other thing, if I had my dream to do over again, I might try to be a writer. And I love the way good writers, can affect people's emotions and affect their lives. And it's an aspect of expression through writing.
Have you thought about writing a book?
I have, and I am.
Oh,
A
good.
colleague of mine who's a physician and I are writing a book around One Health, and we've collected One Health stories, some of these great stories, and we realized that in order to tell those stories, they are like writing literature, because they do start with how, what is the story, what is the theme, where is the climax of the story, how does it build, and these One Health stories are very dramatic. They're
I bet.
everything from gorillas in Rwanda, what we're learning about that, to the value of pets and emotions and support animals, so there's a lot of different ways that we can, look at that. And so, yeah, writing a One Health book is a project right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, everybody go follow you so we can keep up with this and know when it or is out and available. And hopefully I can convince you to come back and talk more about the book because that sounds
Yeah, I
fascinating.
might I might develop a theme as humans as the most invasive species.
Oh yeah.
Which is,
I can see that.
yeah.
That's a good title. So
Yeah.
after all of the things you've done, is there anything on your bucket list? Maybe writing the
Mm.
book. I don't know.
That's we're doing a lot of traveling right now, but also some things, like when I went to Royal Veterinary College or to Chile to visit other colleagues around the world, I think learning and seeing all the different ways that veterinarians are involved in around the world, and their contributions to their societies, their culture, their so continuing to do that, I think, get to visit these places, contributing to the national academies. We have a lot of service that we can do there. There's only 25 veterinarians out of 2,000 in the National Academy of Medicine. I've made it my passion to try to recruit other qualified veterinary scientists into that organization. So that's certainly on my bucket list to do. Um, and trying to spend as much time with my 7 grandchildren as possible.
Oh,
So that's that's a real priority right now.
yeah.
And they're getting involved in everything from Irish dancing to, horseback riding to, so that's going to be a fun part in this next phase.
Yes, that's very impressive. I like that a lot. And again, you're very good in these rolling of the questions because the final question is what is something you're most grateful for?
I think, living this long, but also being able to contribute and be able to add back, and give back. One of the things I didn't tell you, and that few people know, but I almost died when I was 3 years old
Mhm.
in viral encephalitis. And this was way back in Kansas in 1959. They had no idea. I just fell asleep, went into a coma, had 106 fever, went into the hospital. They thought I was going to die. And my mom had a nervous breakdown during this time period. And the reason I'm telling you this story is that the rest of my life, my aunts would come up to me. I did survive. I had learned how to
Right.
walk all over again and potty train all over again. I don't remember much about it because I was only 3, but my aunts would come up to me and said, when you almost died, I took care of you, or I took care of you and your mom. And so early on, I was imprinted with, I have a chance to live life and I given a second chance. And so I think it set a tone in me that I needed to give back, and I didn't want to waste it the second time. And so early on, I think I was imprinted. I was very lucky to survive after 3 weeks in the hospital, having to learn to walk all over again. And so, again, that set a tone of gratitude my entire life, and I'm very, very grateful.
And interesting, it was a virus?
It was, and maybe my revenge was becoming a virologist to
You're
study
gonna
them.
go kill
Yeah.
them. No.
Or at least understand them. Yeah.
Yes, that is much more your personality is to
Yeah, yeah.
understand. I like that.
Mhm.
Very interesting. Aren't you glad you stayed until the end? Thank you for being part of this profession. You are valued. Please share this episode, the podcast, and the podcast over on YouTube with someone else you know who would enjoy it. I try to make the audio and videos wonderful. I have a goal to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so please join me there. Until next time.